Hello to everybody on BC. Can't make it today. My thoughts and prayers are with everybody there in this tragic time. My name is James Mitchner. I played with Steve at Acadia, and I'm very fortunate to have him in my life for the amount of years as I did. He was amazing, amazing. His family asked that I come and sing this today at the Celebration of Life, but I couldn't be there in person, so we're going to try to do my best to make it through this. This one's for Steve. Music is a bit of a healing thing for myself, so take the message how you will from the song, but God bless and I love you, Steve. Chord that David played and it pleased the Lord, but you don't really care for music, do you? Well, it goes like this: in the fourth and the fifth, the minor fall and the major lift, the baffled king composing hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Well, your faith was strong, but you needed proof. You saw her bathing on the roof, her beauty in the moonlight overthrew you. She tied you to her kitchen chair, she broke your thorn and she cut your hair, and from your lips she drew the hallelujah, hallelujah. Baby, I've been here before. I've seen this room and I walked this floor. I used to live alone before I knew you. I've seen your flag on the marble arch, but love is not a victory march. It's cold and it is broken. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. There's time when you let me know what's really going on below, but now you never show that to me, do you? Don't remember when I moved in you and the holy dawn was moving too, and every breath we drew was hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Well, maybe there's a God above, but all I've ever learned for love is how to shoot somebody who outdrew you. It's not a cry that you hear at night, it's somebody who's seen the light. It's cold and it's broken, hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. God bless. Steve, I love you. I'll see you soon, brother.
That's a great song that so many singers all attempt to do, and that was just a wonderful rendition of a song written by another great Canadian, Leonard Cohen, and we thank him. What a great job that was. At this time, we'd like to have Mr. Jeff Cummings come up and share a prayer with all of us. Jeff?
This is going to be difficult, but I'm going to get through it with everyone's help through this. Something that Steve-O and I at our house, did on different occasions, and we're going to do it now. So I'd like everyone to grab hands to the person next to you. And I know some of you don't know each other, but hey, we're all family in here. We came here for a reason. Please bow your heads, and we'll go from here. Dear Heavenly Father, we humbly bow our heads before you to ask for your guidance through this day, that we may celebrate the life of Stephen Faoro. Please open our hearts to the healing that needs to happen today. We ask that you help us to understand what your plan is. Please remind us of all the great works and great things that you made happen while you worked through Steve. Bless all that have come here to remember and celebrate Steve today. He is forever in our hearts, and now, Lord, he is forever in your hands. In your Son's name we pray. Amen. I've been afforded the luxury to sit up here and talk. And the reality is, I don't need that microphone. I never have. You thought Steve was loud? You never met me. I have no problem talking at the top of my lungs about this young man. There's a part of me that's going to try to keep it together, and there's a part of me that's going to have a real hard time. But we're going to have some fun here, because the way I read it, it was celebrate Stephen Faoro. It wasn't mourn the loss, it was celebrate. There's one thing that dude knew how to do, it was celebrate. I was fortunate enough to be around him early stages of his university career. My good friend and co-coach, Clint Utley, recruited him, and he brought him from way out here on the West Coast all the way over to the far East Coast. Now, when he recruited him, he was a good-looking dude. Put together, linebacker, coming to play for us. We're all right. This dude's a stud. I watched him on film. I got to see him play. We met him, fell in love. Man, fantastic. He showed up 4 months later. We were trying to figure out where that dude went. Because he put on about 35 pounds and came back looking like an offensive guard, not a linebacker. To his credit, we created a whole new position for him. He became a hybrid linebacker, defensive lineman. And for many of you who received emails from him years past, his email address was axebacker40. Yeah. Well, that's because we had to create a whole new position for him. Axebacker. And we let him play it. And he played it well. He was a stud from the day he walked onto our campus and to the day he walked off. And I had to write notes down because I didn't want to forget anything. Steve was an all-star. He was the two-time Defensive Player of the Year in our conference. He was an All-Canadian. He was a team captain, and he was a leader amongst all those men. I was fortunate enough in 2011 to be a part of the coaching staff for the senior national team, that jersey that you see right here. And the coaches talked to me about players that I thought could play. I said, I got a dude. Who's that? I said, Steve Faoro. Oh, he's old. And you guys with Bellingham were like, old? Hell, I watched him play here just a minute ago. He showed up and was a guy that we added onto the roster and put him on, and Steve did what he always does. He walked in, he won over their hearts, he won over their minds, and he was elected by the team as a team captain. He walked out with that flag I don't know how many times before games, running around, crazy as always. Okay? Running up and down and so proud, as he always was. That big smile. Big smile on his face. He was a guy that was not only good at Acadia, he was good everywhere he went. And I could talk about football for hours. I see jerseys on here from teams that he's played with in the last couple years, that he played with years ago, that he played with in his high school, and then he was playing with us. But I want to talk about some of the other things. And I appreciate the opportunity to sit here and speak. I can't tell you how much. Steve meant something to my family. And I'll start it out like this so I don't break up. I saw the Superman shirts. Some of you may not have seen the posting my wife put up for the original Superman shirt, when he actually came to a Kinder Skills day for Halloween in the full Superman outfit. Now, it might have been X-rated because that stuff was a little too tight in certain places. But he wasn't scared. And our guys can attest to that, and you guys that have played with him, he wasn't scared. So the Superman shirt that he wore as he played, as he got older, that started a long time ago when he was in full outfit. The cape too. And I'll tell you this, I see the shirts, and I see everybody wearing the Superman stuff, and I got to be honest with you. We were shopping just the other day on my daughter's birthday, Saturday, and we all bought Superman socks. And they went out that day, and my daughter had a basketball game and scored 25 points out of 40 total. And then my son played in the provincial championships and had a sack and a half, and they won the provincial championships. And hell, I'm wearing them today. He's up there right now, patting me on the back. Tell me, you're all right, coach. You're all right. Don't worry about it, buddy. You're all right. You're all right. So I'm going to be all right for a minute. My daughter's birthday was Saturday. Last year, Stephen called my house. We weren't there. He left a message out of the blue for my daughter's 10th birthday just to say happy birthday. Now, I know I'm not alone, but that's the type of person he was. He hadn't seen my daughter since the 2011 summer. And last year he called just to say happy birthday. In our house, we have a recipe, maybe it's a family heirloom here, I apologize, for Faoro's chicken. God is my witness, may he strike me down if I'm lying. In his handwriting, artichoke hearts, that's yours? Okay, so all right. Artichoke hearts, olives, chicken. Man, I go down the whole, man, I kill that every time we eat it. My wife found it the other day and she wanted to know if I wanted to bring it back because it's in his handwriting. I said, nah, I got to keep that. That's a pretty good recipe, honey. And as you can tell, I ain't scared to eat, so. You have to understand that Stephen was part of our family. He'd come over for meals. He'd hang out with us. Trust, fellas, big part of who I am, right? I trusted him. He babysat my kids on a number of occasions. In fact, we were having a conversation just yesterday about how the guys were all supposed to go out and party and do this stuff, and he said, I can't go. They were like, what? I got to babysit Coach's kids. Now, he might have been in trouble. I don't remember, but when I leave my house with my 5-year-old son and my 4-year-old daughter, I trusted him. And I've read the stories online. You want to talk about having your back, like you said? Yeah, you're right. You had to know Steve had your back, period. It was never any question. It wasn't anybody like, oh, does he? You didn't even get to that part because you knew you could trust him. And he was there for you all the time, 24/7, 365. There was never any doubt. Every game that he played in at Acadia, he made a point after the games were over to come over and give my kids a hug. We got pictures of them in mud. We got them in sunshine. come over and give my kids a hug. Like many of you here, he made a point to make everyone feel special. That's one of the best traits he had. Everybody felt special. He was talking to you. Wasn't worried about all that other stuff. He was talking to you. To me, you know, that carries more weight than you can even expect. My son, you want to talk about being a part of the family. When my son and my daughter came over to Austria with my wife, they traveled 14, 15 hours. My wife does not travel well. So she was sick more than once, hadn't eaten, dehydrated, all the rest of it. I had my kids write a diary. I think you guys might have heard this. Write a diary of what their experience was like going over to Europe. My son wrote in this diary, long trip, mommy got sick, but it's okay because I get to see daddy and silly Steve. Silly Steve was who he was to my family. He was a little kid in a grown-up body. He was a kid that was not scared to show you every bit of emotion he had. That boy has cried in my arms for hours. We've laughed for hours. We've got excited and chest bumped and got excited about doing things on the field. I can't tell you the range of emotions that I was fortunate enough to share with him. Just like the emotions that are going to get shown today. The last part for me was Steve was my friend. After he got done playing for me, he coached with me for a year. And we changed our relationship a little bit to where he became my friend. A memory that will hold dear to me for the rest of my life. No one in here knows about except me and him. I had the coaches to a cottage for a dinner, barbecue, and have a couple of pops. At the end of the night, the other coaches said, "Oh, I got to go. I got to go out, party with my friends, or see my wife or my girlfriend or whatever it was." I said, "Steve, you taking off too?" "Are you kidding me? I'm with you, coach." Okay. So we stayed there, had a couple more beers, crashed out. 7:30 in the morning, I walked out on the dock and I started fishing. About 10 minutes later, my man walked out of the house with 2 cups of coffee and said, "Coach, you catch anything yet?" And we sat out on that deck for about 2.5 hours just fishing, me and Steve-O. That's a memory that I will keep with me for the rest of my life. No one else knows about it, except all of you now. I'll just let it slip. Cat's out of the bag. He was a friend. He's a guy that I can't even begin to put in words the sorrow, and the sympathy, and what I would love to say to you as his family and all of you as his friends. I don't have words to tell you anything more than this young man was somebody who touched all of us. We had a whole bunch of sayings at Acadia when he was around, and one I know he took with him. Because Steve, as many of you can say, was all in. Steve was never a guy that walked to the pool and put his toe in and was like, "Yeah, I don't know." Steve jumped in with a cannonball in everything he did. The story just came in. We're getting ready to play the season, and in the summer that he stayed with us, in the summer, he was training, he was lifting, he was built like a Greek god. He was so put together, man, it was crazy. We're playing a softball game 2 weeks before the season starts. Typical Steve. I saw the picture, I don't know, it was on Facebook, where he's playing flag football and he's completely laid out. Right? Flag football. Like, dude, take a breath. Like, relax, man. No offense to his teammates, but you know what I'm saying? Like, hey, you're 32. Like, hey. You ain't no spring chicken. You're going to hurt yourself. So here we were getting ready to play, and the season was about to start, and he was just the defensive MVP of our conference. He was my team captain. He was a stud. And he tried to stretch a double into a triple and pulled his hamstring. Because when he went, he was all in, man. If there's anything that I can share with you right now, then I know I've taken my time, but this is like the Grammys, man. I don't care. If there's anything I can say to you is, go all in. Don't waste time. Don't ever not call somebody and tell them you love them. That boy knew I love him. Every time I talked to him, I told him I loved him. And I kissed him. And I hugged him. I don't give a damn. People watch me hug and kiss these guys all over here. I don't care. I don't. Because life is entirely too short. That dude was all in. His line that has been used, and unfortunately in his era and in his classes, he's the third one that has passed away, that I've watched and had to bury. And the line is, make a memory. We make memories. He makes memories. We all have them. I know I got them. I said the other day, I sent a note to Steph and said the other day, I called his cell phone. I knew I wasn't going to get him. But I called his cell phone just to hear his voice. I found a DVD in my office of Steve doing a training video for some of our guys. I heard his voice. It's distinct. There's no hiding it. He's that guy. His voice will ring on in my head for the rest of my life. I hope that we get a chance to celebrate him today. I hope that you all understand that he's touched all of you. And remember all the great things that happened with Stephen Faoro. Stephen Q. Faoro to us at Acadia. I love him. I miss him. And I'm very grateful that I'm here to speak to all of you. It'll take some time. Remember, God is good, and he knows it, and he's up there right at his right hand. Thank you for letting me speak.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was Coach Cummins, the head coach of the Acadia Axemen. If you couldn't tell by the way he speaks. The only thing I wanted to ask him was, though, you know, with the hugging and the kissing and all that kind of stuff, are you...
You wanted a hug, that's all it was.
Well, absolutely. You didn't let me finish.
Sorry.
What I was going to say is, with all that hugging and kissing you do with all your players and everything, are you sure that you're not part Italian somewhere? Because you talk real loud. And testa duro, okay? So I think combination there, I maybe want to get a DNA test. We're going to, because there's so many people here, I mean, I think some of you, sure you weren't thinking this was Pat Quinn's, because that's how popular Stephen looks from here. Like, it's just amazing. And I've done speeches and emceed things like the Children's Hospital Foundation with 800-900 people, and I think this is the largest crowd I've ever spoken in front of. This is just amazing. It shows the love and appreciation for Stephen and his family is just incredible. Thank you all for coming here. We want to make sure that, because there's been a lot of mourning done, and there's still mourning to be done, that we do make this a celebration. And I know the family, we set things up this way so that it would be a moment of celebrating the life and spirit, because as we know with Stephen, he'd be making fun of something right now. And he'd be joking about something else, and there was just never going to be a moment of, you know, everybody, the hangdog look on your face. Don't do it. I think we all love and respect him, but the whole idea here is to share some wonderful stories of a life well lived, short but well lived. I want to just mention a couple things before I have a few more people come up for speeches. I knew when Stephen was born, he was going to be a great athlete, because I had the fortune of going to school and graduating with his mother and father. And I know the kind of spirit and competitiveness they had. And, you know, I've been lucky enough with Rick, been on a couple of sports teams with him and stuff like that. The competitive spirit was already there. And one of the things I think so many of us have had a tough week with is we all have sons and stuff like that. And we always compare our sons, and you want them to grow up a certain way. Well, after Rick and Sylvia had Stephanie and Stephen, I had twin boys, and they were white, blonde little guys. And, you know, I remember one day, I think Rick and Sylvia were over or something, and they were running around the backyard, crawling and everything. And I said to her, "They look like Stephen and Stephanie." I'm not going to call one of them a girl, but I'm just saying. Thank God one of them's not here. But anyway, it was just one of those things, you know, when you hear that he's passed away, to me it was like, oh, it hit so hard, because we all think, my God, you know, how can something like that happen? But it does. And, you know, it's just part of life and everything else. And you celebrate the kind of guy he was. I mean, he was so much fun to be around. You just could not get in the same room. In fact, you know, one of the reasons I'm up here, I'm sure, is because Rick knows I've got the biggest mouth he knows. So he got me up here. But I can remember going to wonderful parties at their house, and there wasn't enough room in the house for me and Steve to start talking, because we were like, okay, it's my turn now, you know. You want to fill up the room with everything, and that's just the kind of guy he was. But I wanted to mention a couple of stories without dragging this out too long. I know a lot of people are back here standing. In my own instance, one time I had a friend of mine, and her son was getting bullied at school a little bit. And I said, oh, what school do you go to, and this and that, and he told me, and I gave him a little bit of advice, said, you know, things like that seem to work their way out and everything. Later that week, I went by Rick and Sylvia's house, and there was Stephen. And I said to Stephen, I said, well, what school are you going to? And he told me Pine Tree, and I said, well, listen, you know, a couple of days ago I was talking to somebody, they got a problem getting bullied in school and stuff like that. Why don't you keep an eye on this kid for me? He says, yeah, tell him to come over and say hi to him. So I called the kid up that night, and I said, you know, when you go, you know who he is. Oh yeah, we all know in the school who Stephen is. And I said, when you go up, just say, hey, I'm Vince's friend, and I just wanted to say hi. Well, this turned into an experience for the kid. He became like a rock star, because Steve would walk around with him like this. Like, anyone, make sure everybody knows he's with me. So it was like problem settled. And it was in such a nice way that it wasn't, you know, any confrontational stuff or anything like that. That's the way he was. Then, knowing that story, I reposted some stuff on Facebook. And I found out that a young lady that I've known through other ways lived on your street. And she Facebooked me and told me the story of her going to school with Stephen. And her name is Christy Crawford. And she told me that she was so happy to see that we were all getting together and everything. And she said that she lived on Camellia Court as well. And she goes, he basically saved my life in high school. Because she used to get bullied quite a bit. And she tells a story of one day being on a bus or something, and some kid started bullying her again, and Stephen got up and walked over to the kid and said, well, you know, this is only going to end one of two ways. There's going to be a lot of friendship happening real quick, or there's going to be a lot of other stuff happening really quick. She's a very good friend of mine, and anyone who bullies her is basically bullying me. And, you know, Christy told me, she was never bullied again. But But that's the kind of spirit. I mean, he wasn't the kind of guy. Some guys would do that to show how tough they are. And they wouldn't just have a talking to. There'd be a slap involved or something else to prove how tough. But Stephen wasn't like that, you know, and neither was his father. I think they all come from the same roots. What it was if you can get it done without having any violence involved, why not? And he had, of course, the gift of the gab and joking around. And, you know, there's another person who is so thankful for having him touch their lives. And I can go on and on with stories like that. But I think we better move on. We've got a lot of people we want to hear from. And I think next we're going to hear from former Acadia player Derek Smith.
Felt it was important to travel here in person. Joined here by coaches and teammates from 3 different continents all over Canada. And the U.S. The most importantly, thank you, and to share memories, you know, about Stephen, with Stephen here, and his family. To cherish how incredible of a friend he was, teammate and brother over the years that we played together. He was family, and to all of us, his incredible energy, infectious smile, which the photos that Stephanie and the family have been sharing, where you can literally see his back teeth, you know, and that continued. You see through pictures at Acadia and throughout his life. That is best described. It is absolutely infectious and brings warmth to all those in the room with him. And his genuine interest in people, which Coach Cummins summed up so well. I mean, it was just incredible how much he truly cared about his friends, family, and brothers, those that he surrounded himself with. And obviously, I was devastated to hear about his surprise passing. Stephen at Acadia was undoubtedly one of the most memorable players that we had during our tenure there. He made more than his fair share of memories and shared those with the team. I did a 5th-year victory lap, as I know quite a few of the other players there. Stephen joined us in my 3rd season and continued on for 2 years after I left to win a couple conference championships, and frankly to cement his position, frankly, as perhaps the most impactful defensive football player in our school's history. I recall Stephen's recruiting trip to Acadia vividly. A great time was definitely had by all, and fortunately, well, I think it was actually Coach Utley and Cummins who traveled out to see him and ended up turning a brief moment in, but certainly sold the deal. And when Stephen joined us at Acadia, it was a sure thing from that point forward. He continued to be, a great ambassador for the program, welcoming young players, frankly, and providing mentorship at a very awkward, first year of joining. Stephen always made a point of befriending those who came from all across Canada, the U.S., and truly built deep friendships with all those, and really gave them a helping hand to move forward. I remember some of the Acadia videos that he was asked to participate in, and talking about his passion for the school and the experience there, and it just resonated. I know just how much he loved his time there and experience. Stephen always did put the team first. I do remember him showing up first year slightly differently. He might have put on a few pounds, but I'm pretty sure he was still better, faster, and stronger. And looking forward to playing linebacker. And they ended up crafting this, this new role for him, which I don't think he, he maybe paused for but a moment and asked the question, you want me to play defensive line? Here's our star linebacking recruit being asked to play a totally different position, and selflessly being the man that Stephen does, took that task on and did a phenomenal job. Playing alongside Stephen and sharing his passion and energy alongside, and the sport he loved, was such a great privilege. And I can use a single play to describe what it was like playing alongside him. But there were many plays such as this. We'd break the huddle. I've got a nickname that some of the guys crafted as a dumb smart guy. Instantly walk away, forget actually what the play was. I'd look over at Stephen, so a bit of anxiety. Either he would give me the signal back, all right, you're blitzing, or I'm blitzing. We'd sort it out, and then I was calm. And then I'd look over and I'd see Stephen just so intensively engaged, literally looked like foaming in the mouth, and then the excitement starts building. And then I'd look across at the other side of the the table, the line of scrimmage, and I remember this: with third and inches, looking across and pitying those guys across with the full intensity that Stephen's about to unleash. He drives forward, jumps over the line of scrimmage, and headbutts a guy in the chin, knocks him backwards into Pee-wee football, where he probably wished his mother never signed him up for it, first place. And first down Acadia with fantastic field position. I mean, he was so exciting to play alongside. He was such a phenomenal playmaker. Stephen had all the attributes required to be, frankly, a truly great player on the field, and off the field, and around the field. So, his passion and intensity, 10 out of 10. Commitment to the team and excellence, 10 out of 10. His work ethic, unbelievable. I mean, he was not the fastest on the team, but you would never see him lose a wind sprint in practice. I mean, he worked so hard. His extracurricular activities with the SMILE program and the mentorship to young players and kinder skills, phenomenal. His GPA, well, that's only measured out of 4, but I recall hearing after his first term, him telling me, and I said, "Double what? The goonagoo, Steve, are you kidding me?" And that was a catalyst. We regimented a regular study hall, and I know Stephen, fearful of letting his teammates down and himself down and not being able to play the sport that he loved so much, he got on it and got his act together, got his studies underway, and finished strongly. Towards the end, he was actually running study hall regularly. And I don't think anyone ever showed up late again, because they were fearful of the full wrath of Stephen if they're offside. One example I'll use, just in terms of his genuine and his genuineness and real interest and love for people. I recall walking into the physio room, and you had the Cali boys there. You had Murphy and Mike Black and all these guys with a few ice bags on them. And you had Stephen in the corner with, if Murray had 6 ice bags, he probably had, 9 on him, and he would beat himself up every game. But he'd have someone on either end taking his tape off, and quite literally, if he asked for it, probably someone fanning him and feeding him grapes. He was a Greek god, and everyone there absolutely loved him because he cared. The physio attendees, you would have had You know, some of the comments from the people that spent so much time with him, and it's amazing. I mean, you exert so much energy out there on the field, and you're beaten up, broken, but still, his personal elements, his character. He would be there, hugging kids, all the physios. He took genuine interest in them, knew them personally, knew their interests, knew all about them, and became great friends with everyone. He was truly a larger-than-life character. We've all been blessed to know him and are so thankful that he's enriched us with those incredible experiences. And he'll continue to live, undoubtedly, amongst us. And I can say that on behalf of our, Acadia Brotherhood, which goes well over 100 strong, of guys that he's played with and has had such an incredible impact during his time there. Personality can sway in the wind, but Stephen's character, he was an absolute rock. So admirable and such an honorable man, and and I absolutely love him. And God bless you, Stephen. Thank you.
Thank you, Derek, for those fine words. Next, we'd like to have Earl Knight come up, and he's the president of the Vancouver Flag Football League, to say a few words. While he's making his way up here, I'll just mention that when we found out that Stephen was going to go to Acadia, I remember saying to his father, and maybe Steve at the time, he said, Acadia? Not that the program is not any good, but we got SFU here, UBC where he played. They're going to turn him into a fisherman. And I used to bug Stephen about that, whatever. Are you still taking up fishing yet, or are you still coming back to the West Coast? But it was one of our little inside jokes. Come on up. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Earl Knight, and I'm one of the executive board members for Top Flight Flag Football in Vancouver, which has over 18 teams in it and over 300 players. The league would like to express our condolences to the parents, to his family members, friends, and teammates. When I first met Steve, it was in 2011. And I was one of the referees, one of the sideline officials. There's 4 referees, 2 on the field and 1 on each sideline. And I was one of the referees, and the team he played for, the Villains, he was late. And Stephen had come running to the sideline, and the game was already going on. And he pulled out some tape. And as I was kind of watching him, he's taping up his wrists for flag football. And I kind of looked over, and I never met him. I said, "What are you doing?" He responded with, "What does it look like?" And he smiled. He then proceeded to go onto the field, and I was thinking, either this guy is just one gym rat that's never played, never saw him, or he's going to be unreal. He was the latter. He was unreal. So he got on the field, and like Coach said over there, as he saw on Facebook, Stephen would be flying through the air, back and forth throughout the game, big motor, and he just wouldn't stop. He became the league's best defensive lineman. In 2012, right in the first year, we met. We play a league of 12 games, and then we go into a playoff format. At the end of the format, there's an award ceremony at the end of the year, capping off the year. So the very first year, us board members, committee members, we all got together and said, this guy is the best or most outstanding defensive lineman. So we gave him the award. part of the award is people are sitting out like you, all the players and family members and kids, and part of the formality is when you hand him the award, you bring up the player, and he puts his arm around me, and I put my arm around him, and they take a picture of him holding the trophy. So that happened in 2012. 2013, at the end of the year, we're doing the same thing with the same guy. You're the best D lineman, most outstanding, come on out, get a picture. Fast forwarding another year, we go to 2014, this year. In the spring, here we go again, we finish it. End of the year, most outstanding defensive lineman, Steve Faoro. Another picture. That was in June. Then there was a tournament, the Western Canadian Flag Football Tournament, held out in Abbotsford. It's pretty intense. And at the end of the tournament, it's a 3-day tournament, and at the end of the tournament, guess who we're awarding again? Steve Faoro, most outstanding D lineman. So I call Steve up, hand him the trophy, and as I'm handing him the trophy, I said, "This is becoming pretty routine to you, isn't it?" And we're both posing for the trophy. And he responded with, "No, I just like getting my picture taken with you." So that was August. A month later, we started the Fall League to start a brand new league again. And this is just recent. And this started in September. So it was probably close to the last game of the year, getting ready for the playoffs. And I'm on the sideline. There's Team A, Team B, the officials on the field, and I'm on the sideline, and I'm down watching the line of scrimmage. Steve's already played, and now he's finished, and he's now sitting back. I feel like he was that close. And he came up from behind, and he grabbed me. Very weird feeling. And he lifted me up in the air, and he said, "I just want to say congratulations," as I had just been inducted into the Western Canadian Flag Football Hall of Fame. I said, "Thank you, but I got a ref here. Appreciate that." So the next play happens, and it must be a, 15-yard gain, so I have to move down 15 yards. I'm standing there on the next play. His voice, like you said, very distinctive. I hear his voice. Again, he just grabbed me down there, and now he's standing behind me. And he says, "You won defensive MVP 10 times?" And I'm thinking, what's this got to do with the game? Yes. And he was smart. He had a great football IQ because he would wait in between plays to speak, not while the actual game's going on, but it was in between plays. So now another 15 yards goes down. I go down another 15 yards. There's the voice again. He's right behind me again. He's walking the field with me. Like, what are you doing? So he says, "You know, I've won 4 outstanding player awards in a row." Yeah, whatever. Next play. So now we're getting down, probably going into the red zone, and there's the voice. And he says, "That's probably a record, what you have." He's narrating my life down the sideline. Finally, we get down to the 10. And he says, "You know I'm going to break your record." Just trying to ref the game. So I thought, I'm going to be wisecrack him. I thought, you know what? This is bad that a referee is now thinking about a guy who's talking and not watching the game. I says, "You know what?" I says, I'm thinking, well, I'm 49. He's got 4. I got 10. He's going to need 7 more. So I'm doing the math. Not doing my job, doing the math. So I said, "Well, Steve," I said, "by the time you break the record, I'll be 57. I thought, I got him now. We're on the 5-yard line. He waits between plays. He says, "I'll see you when you're 57." He was a passionate guy, probably the most passionate guy I've seen. Passion's something that you can't teach. You can teach people how to backpedal, brake, come off the edge, blitz, all kinds of things, but you can't teach passion. And Steve exemplified passion. What we're going to do in the next spring is I'm on the committee, so I'm going to be making something pass here. And instead of the Outstanding Defensive Lineman Award, it's going to be the Steve Faoro Outstanding Defensive Lineman Award. Now, I wear this poppy. I hope it doesn't offend anybody because I know it's not Remembrance Day. But Remembrance Day, or the poppy, to me, represents the love we have for our fallen soldiers. All the heroes that have fought for us. And today, I wear a poppy for Steve Faoro, as he definitely was one of our heroes. Thank you.
Next, we have Pat Fiander, and he's an honorary uncle, as there's probably half this room is an honorary uncle to Stephen.
Tell you, this is a lot easier in my bathroom this morning. It's going to be now, but I'm truly honored to be here. All I can say is, what a life. Over 40 years ago, I met Stephen's dad, Rick. We played football together at UBC. And on that day, a wonderful friendship started to blossom, and it endures to this day. As our families grew older, the relationship and family blossomed as well. Rick and Sil had Steve and Steph, and we had Jordan and Darcy. My wife and I have been thrilled to be Aunt Joan and Uncle Pat to Steve and Steph. And my sons have been blessed to have Auntie Sil and Uncle Rick and Cousin Steve and Steph. Over the years, and obviously particularly over the past couple of days, I've heard so many wonderful stories about Steve's role with children. My kids idolized Steve. He was a little older, and it was kind of that time when, you know, if you were going to play with young kids as a teenager, it just wasn't cool. It didn't matter. He was an absolute treasure to my sons. He spent time with them. He loved them. He was just thrilled to be around them. To my kids, Steve was a great friend, but he was also a big brother, a mentor, a role model, and a hero. I think I've got two wonderful sons, and I'm very proud of them. But I sincerely believe one of the biggest and most powerful influences in their life has been Stephen. Our very good friends, the Bordens, are here today, and they got to know the Faoros mostly through our annual August party up at Seashelt. And they were over the other day. They have a lovely daughter. She's 12 years old, and her name's Kate. And from the time Kate's been old enough to walk, Stephen has been her giant teddy bear. She loved to play with him. He loved to play with her. They had a very special game called Tickle Finger. And Kate would squeal with laughter, and Steve had a smile on his face that would fill this room. Very recently, as a matter of fact, last night, Kate came over and she had a coloring book. And it was from one of the trips up in Seashelt. And she'd hand-drawn 3 pictures that were in the book. One was our house, one was the beach, and one was 2 fingers with the crayon-written word below, Tickle Finger. I think everyone knows Steve's love of people was extraordinary. He didn't try to be your friend, he just simply was. He always made me feel very special when I was around him. He would come into a room, it got brighter, got happier, it got louder, got a lot more fun. He was outgoing, he was gregarious, he was funny, he was loud, and he was big. But he was always very humble and very polite. I'd watch him and I'd smile when he came into a room as he worked his magic and made everyone around him feel so special. I think he could be the center of attention in so many situations, but he had the ability to make you feel like you were the center of his world. So many people that I know are here today because he made them such a special part of his life. I think Steve's athletic endeavors are legendary, and I know people are talking about that today, and I'm not going to talk about it to the extent that I want to talk about what I think allowed him to be that person. I was out for the candle vigil on Tuesday night and then went back to Rick's house. It was crowded, and I'm not that mobile right now, but I found myself in the hallway and I was looking at a photo that was, pardon me, I was looking at a framed picture, and it's over there, the newspaper article, and it was hanging over the fireplace. And I thought I should go over and read it, but again, a lot of people and just not that nimble right now, so it was okay. I was driving home, and I thought, it's okay. I don't have to read it. Because if you haven't seen it, as I say, it's there. It's a picture of Steve. He's got his uniform on. And the headline says, Heart and Soul. And it struck me that I don't need to know anything else. In the time I've known Stephen, I don't care where it was, when it was, or what team he was on, he would be its heart and soul. He was fiercely competitive, he's dedicated, he was an extremely hard worker, he was very team-oriented, he was a great leader. He would always do what was needed to be done for the team. He was also an exceedingly good sportsman. He was a very exuberant and gracious winner, but he was respectful in loss. He just didn't lose that often. I know there's a lot of coaches here, and I coached for a number of years as well. I think most of us would give our right arm to have a kid like Stephen. For me right now, it'd probably be the left, but that's... Steve was a very good athlete, but I think most of us have coached good athletes. Kids who have a great arm, run like the wind, throw, tackle, block. But at the end of it all, you can't coach heart, and you don't practice soul. Steve was the epitome of heart, and he exuded soul. From everything I've said, I know two things. Firstly, if I was ever to go to battle, whatever that battle would be, I would want Steve on my side. Secondly, and far, far, far more importantly, if I ever truly needed a friend, I would want him to be one of them. And I'd want his dad to be one of the others. I mentioned the parties at Seashell. We had a wonderful one this year, and it was very special. Rick came up with Helen and Nicole, and Steve came up, and we got to meet Megan and Cash. And we had a magic time. We took the boat out, and we went to the sand cliffs on Thormanby. And normally that's a situation where the adults sit on the beach and drink beer, and the kids scurry up this huge sand cliff. And after about 5 minutes, I looked up, and there was the biggest kid of all. And I got to tell you, he wasn't halfway up or 3/4 of the way up. He was all the way up. And then he came tumbling down, laughing and screaming, and just absolutely beside himself. So we went back to the house, and as most years have been, it eventually broke out into a party. And as I would call it, buffet and beers. And as in most years, then it happened. Steve was beside me, and he had an absolutely huge grin on his face. And he looks at me and he goes, Uncle Pat, do you know where the beach is? I may ask somebody to help me here, please, because and as many of you will know, there is only one answer to that question. No, Stephen, I don't know where the beach is. Uncle Pat, the beach is right there. I know it kind of loses a lot in translation when an old guy with a broken wing does it, but my God, it was magic up there. Like so many people, I've asked the question why, and I don't think there's an answer. And that's dragged me and many of us down into a cave of sadness, anger, and grief. There is a time to grieve, and the process is hard, but it's also part of healing. A very wise man spoke at my father's service, and he said, always remember the good times. The sad memories will fade, but the good times and the happy times will last forever. And I know it takes a while, but he was right. So as the days and weeks slip away and things start to slowly come back, things will slowly start to come back to normal. But it's a new normal. Firstly, with this new normal, to Sil, Steph, Rick, and Megan, be there for them. Spend time, call, text, visit, hug. Don't be afraid to share stories about good times and keep Steve alive through our memories and our thoughts and the wonderful stories of our time with him. Be there to help. We're all going to need it. There will be times when any one of us may stumble and fall down. Do what Steve would do. Be a true friend. Help, be supportive, be there to help someone get up. Also, in tribute to Steve, think about your life and think about how you live it. What can we take forward, and how can we remember Steve? From everything we know and will hear today, live life with great joy and with great passion. Love friends and cherish family. Seek challenges, don't be afraid to fall down, because you can get back up. Seek friendships and be a true friend. Love family unreservedly. This is how Stephen lived his life. Ultimately, challenge yourself to be a friend, a big brother, a big sister, be a mentor, be a role model, be a hero. I was thinking about a line from my favorite movie, and it just struck me. I absolutely love The Wizard of Oz. And near the end of the movie, the wizard is giving the Tin Man his heart, and he comments, "And remember, my sentimental friend, that a heart is not judged by how much you love, but how much you are loved by others." So on that thought, to Sylvia, Stephanie, Rick, and Megan, and Steve, ultimately to you, from the bottom of my heart, and on behalf of everyone here, we send you every ounce of love our hearts possess. Thank you for being here. I know it means so much. Thank you for listening.
And next, we're going to have Clint Utley, former associate coach of Acadia Axemen, come up and say a few words. Thank you.
In November 2001, the dog. November 2001, I was watching film with Coach Cummins in the office. Somebody had sent us a film, and when you recruit people, you watch the film. So they had told us the name of this kid, and we started watching the film, and the highlight film was of this particular young man, but I kept noticing this other kid on the film. So I'm watching somebody's film, and somebody else keeps popping out on the film, and I'm like, who is that? So then we start to follow up, and we start to look into it, and it's Stephen. So Stephen has somehow worked his way onto somebody else's highlight film and is making more plays than that person, and I sure hope they're not sitting here tonight. So at that point, I'm like, okay, I'm not recruiting that kid. He may be fantastic, and he probably went on to play somewhere else, but I'm recruiting this other kid because by the looks of the film, he looks like a bowling ball with razor blades because he's cutting everything down and knocking everything down. So a week later, I'm in Port Moody, and I've spoken to Steve on the phone. I explained who I am, and he's like, "Coach, I got two quick questions. What is an axeman?" And I'm like, "That's simple, Steve. You run around in the forest with an axe. That's kind of cool." And he's like, "Got it?" And he's like, "Where is Wolfville, Nova Scotia?" So I'm like, so I explained it to him, and anyways, about 5 to 7 days later, I'm sitting in a place, and I think it's called the Cactus Bar or Club. Cactus Club. So me and Faoro are sitting in the Cactus Club. I have 3 scheduled appointments that day. I'm figuring if I meet with Steve at 5, I'll get the other guy at 7, and then I'll talk to the other guy at 9. So me and Steve start talking, and I'm looking at this kid, and I'm like, holy cow, it's me. He's much better looking, but I'm like, this kid, like we're talking about life, we're talking about girls, we're talking about how you treat people, we're talking about how to play middle linebacker, we're talking about football, fullback, family, everything, and we go through it all. And so I cancel the 7 o'clock, and then I cancel the 9 o'clock, and it's 10 o'clock now. And I'm looking at Faoro, and I'm like, holy buddy. I was like, we got a lot in common. And I left the meeting. And I think the last lines were, I looked at Steve, and he's like, Coach, I'm excited, I'm fired up. And I'm like, good, your parents are going to kill me because you're about to play football in Nova Scotia. I called my wife, and I was super excited. I was like, I think I found the one, Katie. I was like, this is the guy I want to be our middle linebacker. And 6 months went on, and Steve sent his transcripts in. And we went and met with the dean of students, and I effectively got down on my hands and knees. And with a solid 65, Steve was admitted into his program. Anyways, when somebody commits to me or to Jeffrey or to Acadia, or even where I've worked since my time with those guys, I try and press 4 principles on them. One is you'll graduate, whether it's your first year, your second year, your 9th year, you're going to finish your undergrad. The second one is you're going to learn how to become a man. Well, in Steve's case, I didn't have to do that because Rick had already done that. The other thing I also push hard is be like a solid human being and a family person. Sylvie had taken care of that. The family part became very evident the first time the entire family came out to watch a game. Steve's like, Coach, at the end of the meeting, can I say something to the team? You guys know Steve, so it's like, hey, I'm not going to hold you back. You're better than me at that. So it was the first time Steph was coming out, and it's like, Steve steps up, looks at all of his teammates, he's like, if one of you guys, if anybody touches my sister, I will kill you with a dull butter knife. True story. So anyways, and then the fourth thing is we guarantee them a championship. Now, the 4 years, Coach Cummins had just come on as a head coach. We had a long way to go, but the 4-year ride that I had with Faoro was spectacular. The first year, he came, and Jeff wasn't lying. Jeff said he was overweight. I said he was fat. So he shows up, he can lift the house, he can run around, but I'm like, there's no way we're starting him at middle linebacker because he's fat. All right, so anyways, we play him at a whole other position. We changed the entire defense. He wouldn't make eye contact with me for like 3 or 4 weeks because I was his coach, or sort of his coach. Year 2 comes along, and now I'm like, Faoro, you're going to be in shape when you come in. And he didn't know the playbook in year 2, so I benched him the first 2 games. And he looked at me and he goes, Clint. Well, he never called me Clint. He's like, friends off, until I figure this out. And then he came back and he got through that second year and he had a great season. And now he's a student of the game. So now he's working out, now he's a student of the game, and then we go into the 3rd offseason, I'm like, now you're going to be a leader, Stephen. You have everything that we want in a leader. And we looked at him and we gave him words that I think have stayed with him for a long time, like dare to be great. You would always hear him saying that. Or can't means won't. Things like that. And we talked, and I used to tell him all the time, leaders don't lead some of the time, they lead all the time, which is with Stephen, you get 90% where he's on the rails and it's going straight, and then he would have a bit of an issue. But I mean, the last thing I leave with Stephen as a leader was, if you got to think about it, you ought not do it. So Stephen took that off season and he ran with it. And he developed as a player. He went into his 3rd year, his 4th year, his 5th year, multiple awards, all Canadians, all conference, team captains, MVP of the entire league. I mean, he had exceeded my expectations, exceeded Coach Cummins' expectations. And I think when I talked to his teammates last night, they'll talk about warrior, they'll talk about competitor, they'll talk about leader. When you coach Stephen, you don't have the same impact, or you don't have the same experience, because whenever you coach Stephen, he becomes part of your family. He does. Jeff spoke of his kids. I'll speak of my wife. I've coached for 15 years at the university level, and he's easily, along with my other Acadia linebackers, my favorite player ever. So I'll leave you with 2 things, and I'll get off the stage. He called me when I had left for UBC. And I'm waiting to play Manitoba. It's Friday night. I get a phone call. It's Stephen Faoro, so I pick it up early. I'm like, Steve, what's wrong? He's like, Coach, I just broke your tackle record. I have more career tackles and more regular season tackles than you do or ever had. And I'm like, that's not how it works, Steve. You beat my record, I call you and I congratulate you. And he was like, he's like, no, but like I'm better. I'm a better linebacker than you. The last thing I'll leave you with, and it speaks volumes of the young man. October 2nd, I resigned as the head coach of McGill. The first person that called me was Faoro. And I did it to stand up for one of my players. And he said he was proud of me. And he asked how my wife was doing. And we said we loved each other. And then I got off the phone, which is something I'll probably regret for a while. So, sorry, sound like a fool. At Acadia, we have a sign of respect. When somebody makes a big play, I get everybody to lift their right hand, and we just tap our hand. That's a sign of respect for Faoro. Thank you very much.
Thank you, that was wonderful. You know, you were mentioning how you thought maybe he was too fat at that time. I've got to tell a joke that happened one time. We're all at a party at Rick's house, and during the party, everybody, you know, us old guys start to brag about our days in athletics and how wonderful we were. And I was telling Steve, and I said, well, I never played football with your dad, but we played rugby, and you know, we have the only championship team ever to come out of East Vancouver to play all the West Side schools and stuff. And I was joking around and bragging, and I'm going, well, you know, your dad was a good player, and Uncle Darrell was a good player, Uncle Alfredo was a good player, but I was the best player on the team. And he looked at me and he went, wow, they must have had all the games in the cafeteria. So then, you know, I just took a deep breath and went to the other side of the room. Now we'd like to have Candace Jones, another honorary cousin this time, come up and say a few words. And while she's coming up here, I'd also like to tell you all that thanks to Candace, she's made this all happen with all this hard work, and that's been a lot of people help, but this girl is just wonderful. So we have her to thank for a lot of this. Thank you.
Anything for Steve? Oh. Okay, I'm going to try to get through this. I know Steve would tell me to picture all of you naked, but I don't want things to get too awkward. My name is Candace Amesbury Jones, and I'm Steve's honorary cousin. I've known Steve my entire life, and he's always called me family and made me feel very special. I now know he called all of you family too, but I'm really trying not to let that bother me. You've all had some sort of connection with Steve over the years, but I can sum him up pretty easily, thanks to Facebook. In order to do so, I would like to reference his 3 most recent profile pictures, which are quotes. And I am unable to quit as I'm currently too legit. I was addicted to the hokey pokey and I turned myself around. And just because I'm a gentleman doesn't mean I won't spank you. I knew from a young age that Steve loved the hokey pokey. I later found out in our teenage years that he was pretty legit. Luckily, I didn't experience the spanking, but he did have a biting problem when he was little, as many of you know. I'd now like to tell a story on behalf of my little brother, Daniel. My brother always looked up to Steve. He wanted to be just like him and truly idolized him. He never called him just Steve. It was always Stephen Faoro, as if he were a big celebrity, which we all see him as one now. We did a lot of camping trips with the Faoro family, and I remember one in particular. My brother was 4 years old, and Steve was about 13. We were with the Baker family too, and all of us older kids had a big tent together. But with my brother being much younger than the rest of us, he had to sleep in my parents' trailer. It was almost bedtime, and my mom told my brother it was time to get his pajamas on. He said, "No, Mom, I'm going to sleep bare naked." She said, "What? You can't sleep naked." My brother explained, "But Mom, I want to sleep bare naked like Stephen Faoro." Stephen Faoro said he was going to sleep bare naked next to Jacqueline. Needless to say, into the tent marched my dad, who made it clear we would all be wearing pajamas, and put us in order with Steve on the far left side, then Stephanie, me, Kyle Baker, and then Jacqueline Baker at the other end. I'm pretty sure a parent checked on us throughout the entire night. In closing, I would like to share with you some advice that Stephen gave my husband and I on our wedding day. Unfortunately, Steve couldn't attend the wedding as he was playing football at Acadia, but he sent a little telegram to share with us. It was hands down the most insightful and meaningful advice we had received. It read, "The wedding night should be like a good turkey dinner, a little bit of breast, a little bit of leg, and a lot of stuffing." Typical Stephen Faoro. The world's loss is heaven's gain. I love you, cuz. Thank you.
Well, I've got to be honest, I'll get some mileage out of that one. Moving right along, we'd like to get Cam Yao to come up and say a few words, former CFL player and also Bellingham Bulldog.
Thanks, everyone. Those were great speeches over there from the X-Men. I want to check my eligibility now and be an X-Men, so thanks, guys. For those who do not know me, my name is Cam Yao. I was a friend, coach, and teammate of Steve Faoro with the BC Spartans, Bellingham Bulldogs, and Vancouver Villains. I'm very honored today to speak about a man who, in my mind, was perfect. He had a larger-than-life personality and touched the lives of everyone that he came in contact with. On the field, he was dominant yet humble. He was hysterically funny yet caring, a true motivator and leader by example. He had a way of making everyone feel like they were important. As you know, Steve had obviously a great sense of humor. He had nicknames for everyone, and for me it was the Big Half Asian, Yam Chowder, Yammer, and my favorite, Trapezosaurus Rex. I loved how he'd yell across the field at Nick Gavigan in his Asian accent, or at Vince Baroni, the great calzone, in his Italian accent. Sometimes practice would come to a halt because Steve would have the whole team laughing uncontrollably. Although Steve was a badass linebacker who could single-handedly change the course of a game, he was also very humble, and for this I loved it. I found a quote online from an interview with his time in Alaska with the Grizzlies. And Steve said, "I'm kind of like Alan, the brother on 2.5 Men. I'm not the Charlie Sheen, but I'm still important for the success of the show." A quote that shows Steve's personality to a T. I love that. Steve and I had some really great times along the way. Simple things like traveling with the team, going out in Bellingham after the games. Trips to Miami in 2009 and Myrtle Beach in 2010 for the national championship game were also very memorable. In 2010, Steve had to leave our team to go play with the Las Vegas Locomotives for the UFL. The UFL was a better stepping stone for him to get into the CFL. He was the heart and soul of the Bellingham Bulldogs, but he was torn because he was leaving the team before the big game. We asked him to go and pursue his dream, so he did. Unknown to most of the team, and against his UFL team's directions, Steve had flown into Myrtle Beach along with his football gear to play with the Bulldogs for the championship game. No one knew this, except a couple players. When he walked into the locker room that day, unexpectedly, right before the game, the place erupted. It was magic. It was uncontrollable, and it was the loudest I've ever heard the team before in the locker room. Although we fell short in that game, he always was there for us, and he never wanted to let anyone down, and he never did. In the time that I knew Steve, he truly enriched my life. I felt a sense of joy every time he showed up to a practice or a game. I just loved seeing him, especially with that beard that got ridiculously out of control. He helped me through a lot of tough times in my life, and no matter how bad anything was, he always made me put a smile on my face and make me feel like $1,000,000. To Steve's teammates, we were all fortunate to have played with him, and in his eyes, you were all brothers. To Steve's mother, father, sister, and family, thank you for sharing him with us. As you can see around the room, my life was not the only life that he touched. He was truly an amazing man. To Megan, thank you for showing him love and happiness. It was no secret to me that he was the love. He was the light. You were the light of his life. If you ever need anything, including a dog sitter for cash, know that me and Rosalind are there for you. I miss Steve so much, but I know I'll see him again. For this I say, not goodbye, but see you later. On behalf of all of Steve's extended football family, we love you, Faoro.
Next, we have a trio coming up, 3 for the price of 1 here. Jeff Irwin, Steve Jordan, and Andy Cutler. And they're all best friends of Stephen.
Hi, everyone. I'm Steve Jordan. This is Jeff Irwin. And to my right, Andy Cutler. And as you've just been told, we were Steve's 3 of his best friends from home here. So how we basically all met, Jeff and I went to high school at Centennial in Coquitlam, while Steve was at Pine Tree, also in Coquitlam. Steve happened to be dating someone we knew in the group of friends that I was friends with, and this is how we all met. We became best friends quickly, and were inseparable from that point. A couple of years after that, we introduced Steve to Andy, and Steve took Andy into our family of friends and called us all his brothers. It seemed like we spent every weekend together at Jeff's house playing Xbox and sitting around telling stories. And man, could Steve ever tell a story. I can't count how many times he would finish our sentences with, "That's what she said," and we would all laugh. Soon after high school, we had to separate for winters. Steve went away to Acadia. I was away at university in New York. Jeff was working on his real estate license, and Andy was away at Kwantlen getting his carpentry ticket. When we all returned for the summer, it was like we didn't miss a beat, hanging out almost every weekend, and for me, every day. Steve got me a job with him at the District of North Vancouver, cutting grass for the Parks Department. We were basically together for 6 days a week, for 3 straight summers. Everybody who knew Steve knows how much he enjoyed a good old-fashioned practical joke. While I don't want to get into the details, I will say we shared a lot of laughs, mostly at my expense, during those summers. At the end of a long day filled with lots of laughs and some work, Steve would take me to the gym and help me train for my upcoming hockey season. Steve was proud and took credit for me showing up for the season stronger and lifting more weight than I'd ever had before. Everyone who knows Steve obviously knows about his laugh. His laugh was so loud and contagious, it would obviously light up a room. One of our favorite things to do together was every Tuesday night we'd go see a movie. And there'd be a part in the movie that was only a little bit funny, but Steve's laugh would fill the entire theater while everyone else was silent. And of course, this caused the entire rest of the theater to light up and laugh with him. Then there were the bear hugs. You could not leave Steve for the day or the evening without him giving you a massive bear hug. Steve wouldn't shake our hands because he didn't shake hands with family members. He gave them hugs. This reminds me of a story from a few years back. Steve, myself, and Jeff here, we went down to Seattle to visit one of our high school buddies. We got a hotel room that only had 2 double beds and no cots were available. Jeff volunteered to sleep with Steve in one of the beds on the first night. The next morning, Jeff pulled me aside and goes, "Dude, I'm not sleeping with Steve again tonight. It's your turn." So I was like, okay, I thought, how can it be sleeping with Steve be that bad? The next night comes along, and now it's my turn. Not 1 hour after falling asleep, I could feel this hot breath on the back of my neck. Then this massive, heavy arm came flying over top and landed flat on my face. I was like, "Steve, move over," trying to shove that big, massive man over. So he would roll over, grunt, go back over to his side, and I swear not even an hour later, I was awoken again by that hot breath in the back of my neck. And guess what? Yeah. That arm wrapped around my head again as Steve was trying to cuddle me. So the next morning, Jeff and I told Steve about his attempts to cuddle us in his sleep. And his response was, "I love you guys even in my sleep." Needless to say, the next night, Jeff and I had to rock, paper, scissors to see who was going to sleep with Steve. Jeff lost, so we decided to sleep in the bathtub. One of Steve's greatest attributes was his love for his family and his friends. He cherished every moment with his family and wasn't afraid to let us all know it. When Megan entered his life, you could see how happy she made him. He would always tell us how much he loved her and about his life plans with her. Megan, Steve loved you so much, and it was plain for all of us to see. Steve made us feel like we were part of his family. This is truly a testament to how Steve was brought up, in a loving family who considered us as family too. Stephanie has always been like another little sister to me. She would always say hello with her big famous Faoro family hug and say, "Hello, brother," from another mother. Steve's parents, Rick and Sylvia, treated us like their sons. They welcomed us into their home and into their lives. Rick and Sylvia, thank you so much for raising such an amazing son, a great guy that I was lucky enough to call my best friend. Steve had an enormous heart, and he always put everyone else's needs and feelings ahead of his own. Steve made time for everyone. Look how many of you are here today. Steve made a place in his heart for each and every one of us here. Steve let everyone he loved know it. I was with Steve on the Thursday before his death, and his last words to me were, "Love you, brother." You will always have a place in my heart, Steve. I love you and I miss you.
I met Steve shortly after he returned home from Acadia for the summer in 2003. Steve was a very dear friend to me from the beginning. I was already friends with Jeff and Jordo, but from the moment I met Steve, he treated me as a brother and immediately introduced me to one of his bone-crushing bear hugs. One day in Jeff's basement, I made the mistake of telling Steve I wanted to get in shape and start running. About 5 minutes later, he threw running shoes and shorts at me and said, "Let's go." For 5 painful kilometers, I followed Steve around the perimeter trail at Mundy Park. He even made me do the big hill 3 times. I was so sore I couldn't walk for 5 days after that. Steve found it funny too. But that's just the kind of guy he was. He would drop everything he was doing to help a brother out. To name some of Steve's best qualities, he was open, honest, loyal, and friendly, which didn't translate too well to his poker game. We had some pretty intense nights over the years. One on a particular occasion, we'd been playing for about 3 hours, and Steve hadn't bet the whole time. He was just checking, calling, folding. And when it came to Steve's turn to make a bet, Jeff would often refer to him as the calling station. Anyways, after about 4 hours, Steve finally made a bet, and every single person at the table threw their cards in. And he's like, "What? Nobody wants to play?" And he showed his pocket aces, and everyone's like, "Oh, weird, Steve." And even though poker wasn't Steve's strongest suit and lost every time he played, he loved to play with us merely because he got to sit around and hang out with us. Steve always bragged how Matthew McConaughey was his man crush. In 2011, Jordo brought me and Steve to a Seahawks game. Steve came straight from football and met us there just after kickoff. After sitting down in the seat, Steve quietly got mine and Jordo's attention and asked if he thought the guy in front of us looked like Matthew McConaughey. We both agreed, after contemplating what to say, he just tapped the guy on the shoulder and said, "All right, all right, all right." And for the rest of the game, Steve and his new friend rehearsed every Matthew McConaughey quote they could think of, while everyone was laughing hysterically. But all things aside, by far my best memories with Steve come from sitting around Jeff's basement, listening to him tell some of the most animated stories I've ever heard, followed by an all-night Xbox battle with the boys. Those were some of the best times ever, and where I learned what true friends are. I'll cherish our memories forever. My heart reaches out to the Faoro family, Megan and Cash. Steve was blessed to have people like you in his life, and we were all fortunate to be touched by his big, kind heart. I'm so thankful for the time we have together. I love you, brother.
Okay, I'm just going to read this here because this is going to be tough. How to summarize someone who played such a major role in my life? Words can't do our relationship justice, but I'll try my best by sharing some of my stories with Steve with you all today. As many of you know, Steve, me, Jordo, and Kotz were practically joined at the hip, often hearing from friends and family in a joking manner that we were more of a cute couple who spent too much time with each other as opposed to friends. Countless hours were spent in my man cave playing Xbox, while slaying dragons, shooting noobs on Call of Duty, or saving the world in our fantasy lands up on our side-by-side TVs. This is, oddly enough, where we got to know each other best. We would discuss everything from family, work, future aspirations, girls, of course, and sports. Something as simple as a couple of guys sitting down in lazy boy couches, playing video games, and crushing Little Caesars pizzas. This is where we bonded and spent most of our time forming our close-knit friendships. I'll probably miss those simple, carefree days the most, where we could all be together and just be ourselves, joking around, being normal guys. This past year, I had the good fortune to spend a great deal of time with Steve. It started off by me and Steve deciding to trim down and shred some of our winter fat. Let's be honest, after all those Little Caesars pizzas, me and Steve had quite a bit of fat between the two of us. So we decided to do the insanity workout. We'd show up at Monday Park with my tablet, a little speaker, 5 days a week, in the morning, rain or shine. We both quickly agreed that we were in way over our heads. After a couple of weeks, with frost on the ground, just finishing the grueling hour workout, decided that we were comfortable with our bodies and the way we looked, and that was the end of insanity. The other thing we shared was hockey. We all know Steve was a fantastic football player, but not the most graceful hockey player, though. He was built more for smashing through things as opposed to the finesse that is required in hockey. But the guy put in 110% effort and picked up the game extremely quickly. Steve always wanted to play hockey, so when I asked him to join my hockey league that played every Tuesday at noon, he jumped at the opportunity. I still remember going out to buy hockey gear with the big guy, and the kid at the sport check looked at him and said, "I'm not sure if we have anything your size, sir." I'd never seen a grown man filled with such pure, childlike sense of joy as when Steve would score a goal on Tuesday hockey. It was like he scored the game-winning goal for the Stanley Cup. All the players from both teams couldn't help but smile and laugh in joy at the awkward giant man on the ice. And then there was working with Steve this summer. I was going into a different direction away from real estate and needed work through the summer. Steve and his dad, Rick, graciously opened up a position for me to help them work their landscaping business throughout the summer before I had to leave to Edmonton. I was extremely happy about this because I got to work side by side with my buddy. So there we were every morning, two big bearded men with cash in the green Suburban. To strangers, probably pretty intimidating, but to anyone who really knew us, the biggest softies in the world, especially with a lab. That was one of the best times of my life. Working outdoors in the sun with my buddy and his dog, listening to music, pushing a lawnmower. I'll never forget the relationship Steve had with his clients. They were more like family with Steve as opposed to being business partners. They couldn't wait until Steve came around so they could get one of his big hugs or firm handshakes and have a bit of a chat with a friendly giant. Yet again, another example of Steve's character that speaks volumes. I felt as though Steve was much part of my family as I was a member of his family. Megan and Stephanie, I care for you immensely, much like the love I have for my own two sisters, Lacey and Leah. If ever in life either of you beautiful women need this help, need the help or advice from an older brother, know that I'm here for you. Rick and Sylvia, you treat me like a son. And just like my parents, Ray and Denise, you treated me as one of your own. When I was out of line or being a little shit and need to be put in my place, you weren't afraid to dish out some discipline. And when I needed love and compassion, I received a warm hug or gentle, kind words of encouragement and hope. I love you all very much. And for Stevie, whom to all three of us truly was like a brother. He really was. I'm grateful for the time we shared together and consider myself blessed to have been able to call myself your friend. I miss you very, very much. So if you get bored up there with all the angels, please feel free to come down here and haunt me anytime you'd like. You know, you can just hang out, just haunt me anytime. You will always be in my thoughts and forever in my heart until we meet again. Rest easy, big guy, and I love you very much. Take care.
And now we'd like to have a few words from Samir Aladdin. That sounds like a good Italian name, but you're from the South, right? And he's Stephen's best friend.
Thanks. I almost didn't speak today, but in my head I kept hearing Steve call me a wuss, so I thought I'd come up and just share something from my heart. Steve and me had been friends since we were 1.5 years old, and he was not only my blood brother, but he was my bodyguard. He not only protected me from the neighborhood bullies and big scary dogs, but since we were little, he also protected me from the girls as well. But now that I'm older, I'm thinking maybe he just kept the girls for himself. To keep this short, I just want to say that since he was my bodyguard, that if God needs a bodyguard, it's an honor to let him have mine. Steve, I love you, I miss you, and we'll see you again one day. Thanks.
And we're going to move on now to the family speeches. And the first family member is probably the youngest football player in this room. And his name's Alex Gagnon, and he's a cousin and a godson to Stephen. And he's going to come up here and give his speech for you. Thank you.
Hello, my name's Alexander. I'm Stephen's cousin and son, and there is a lot of people here. Stephen was my idol. He was my hero. He was pretty much my everything, and I just want to say that I miss him. And I miss coming to Auntie Sylvie's house and sharing pasta with him, and Stephanie and Uncle Rick and my sisters and my mom. And I remember how strong he was when he came back from football one day, and he was limping, and I said, "What happened?" And he said, "It was a tough game, but we won." And I remember this one time when we were in the car, we were in his truck, and we were driving to school, and then we pulled over by this cute girl, and then we both looked over at the same time, and we said, "Hubba Bubba." And then unfortunately she drove off. But then, like Stephen said, he met the best Hubba Bubba of all, Megan. And I remember a lot of stories about Megan, like when we went to his house. We went to his house and we were there, and we were playing video games like all night, like always. And then Megan came home, and then I said, "We should watch a movie or something with Megan." And then Stephen said, "Yeah, that's what girls would want." Yeah. And then, yeah. And then we watched, and then we went to bed, yeah. And then I remember one time when I went to Jeff's house, when we were playing Xbox all night, and then he puts this black stuff in his mouth out of a can, and then I asked what it is, and Stephen and him are both doing it, and I asked what it is, and then Jeff, of course, says it's good for his gums. And then I believed it, and then I was like, "Are you guys lying?" And then Steve told me after it was addicting like smoking. Yeah. So I just want to say that it's amazing how many people can smile over one person. This one's for you, Stephen.
Wow, a star is born. I particularly like him because he's the only one who I have to walk up here and then raise the microphone. Now we're going to have a few words from Megan Eklund, Stephen's wonderful girlfriend, and I found out on the weekend she went to school with my daughter in Calgary, so it's a small world. And have her come up and say a few words, please. Thank you.
Oh, hi. I'm going to try and get through this. Steve was the absolute love of my life. He was my Superman, my light, my everything. We met online, which was, we always hated telling people, but we never ended up coming with something better. On our first date, the instant I met him, I knew he was amazing. He opened doors for me. He danced in the street to random music that we walked by. And he always had this cheeky big grin on his face. I loved how he made me feel small by wrapping his big, huge arms around me. He told me every day how much he loved me. And he always went out of his way to make me feel special. We were fortunate enough to have so many great memories and moments. The best one by far was a couple of Fridays ago. Steve and I found out we're going to have a baby. This is a light in this terrible tragedy. The legend of Steve will always live on through his son or daughter. This has been the hardest week of my life. But I've learned how truly incredible my love was. By the stories, kind words, thoughts, and prayers. Steve talked fondly of his childhood, time at Acadia, playing in Alaska, playing for Team Canada, and of course the Bulldogs and the Villains. I was fortunate enough to see his championship game with the Bellingham Bulldogs, and I will never forget his huge smile, and of course the winks and kisses he sent up to me in the stands as he ran off the field. He was one of a kind, and I feel forever grateful that I was able to call him mine. He will always remain in our hearts, and his legacy will forever live on. Thank you.
Next, we'd like to have a few words from Stephen's lovely sister, Stephanie Faoro King, and made a long trip to come up here, and we're all so happy to see her.
I'm going to get through this for him. When I became old enough to know I had a big brother, my parents would share the story with me of how badly Stephen wanted a sister. On that day that I was born, Stephen came to the hospital and immediately pushed his way through all who were waiting and demanded to be the first one to hold his baby sister. As he held me, he shouted out to the world how happy he was, claiming he was the proudest brother ever. He announced that day that he was never letting me go. He became my protector and the best big brother or sister could ever ask for. I'll never forget my first week of high school when I came home in tears. Stephen said to me, "What's up, little sis?" I then began to explain how I was having some trouble with some of the older kids and how they just wouldn't leave me alone. He gave me one of his huge big hugs and looked at me and said, "Don't you worry, sis. Be out front tomorrow and I'll pick you up after school." The next day, Steve rolled up in his infamous Chevy S10 lowrider with the subs a-blaring, and from that day on, it has been my privilege to be known as Faoro's little sister. I thank you, brother, for all that you are, for all that you were, and for all that you will forever be. Every adventure that we both have shared has made me into the person that I am today. I can still remember those house parties we would throw, and no matter how crazy they got, we always said at the end of the night, "That was awesome." Sorry, Mom and Dad. Thank you, brother, for always being there for me. You've been an inspiration by filling my life with love and laughter. I remember the car rides that were epic. We would sing and dance to our heart's content. Although your singing wasn't the best, neither was mine, but we just didn't care. Thank you, brother, for the memorable vacations. You always pushed me to try something new. I'll never forget that first cliff jump. You egged me on so bad and kept calling me chicken, but I had to be like my big brother and decided to jump in. There's not many people in this world who could have touched so many like you did. Your passion for life and love for your family and friends made you into the Superman we will never forget. I just want to read a little poem from a sister to her brother. You're still here in my heart and my mind, still making me laugh because your stories live on. I hold you in a thought, and I can feel you. I feel you, and this gives me strength and courage. The tears I have cried for you could flood the earth, and I know you have wiped each one away. For you, brother, I promise you this. I will go on with my life, and I will make you proud. I will always hold you in my heart. I promise you I'll be missing you every day till the end of time. But this is not my end, and I can't hold my head underwater. I need to breathe and need to love and miss you, but I also need to live because through me you will live. You will still laugh and love. You will still sing and dance. You will still hug and kiss. You'll be forever be in my life. You'll be forever be my brother, a son, an uncle, a father, and a friend. I'm going to miss your shining face. I think of you and wonder why. I might cry or smile, but at the end of the day, I am one day closer to you. I love you, bro.
Thank you so much. Next speaker will be Dan Stewart, and Sylvia's Don. I'm sorry, Don. Say a few words for us. Thank you very much.
I too don't need a microphone. I don't need a microphone because I'm a very, very loud person, as you can see. It's one of the attributes that I do pick up from Stephen. To my daughter Sylvia, Stephanie, to Rick, to Megan, and to the rest of the Faoro family, Ray, Shirley, I am one of the more privileged people in this room. And the reason I am so privileged is I got to call him my grandson. And that to me was an absolute privilege. To know him, to watch him grow up. Stephen had a sense of humor about him. You've heard words here under tonight. Intensity, good humor, affectionate, passionate, stood for people, helped out. But he had a devil in him too. And I'm going to tell you a story about that devil. When Sylvia and Rick would go out on dates, fortunate for me, I was the babysitter. I got the privilege of looking after Stephen and Stephanie. And what Rick and Sylvia didn't know at that time, we turned the upstairs of the house in Nestor Street into a fortress. And if you think Stephen had intensity, you should have played roughhouse with him. I was on the receiving end of 5-foot dives, coming head on. Grandpa, this is the way we're going to play. And we played that every time I went over there to babysit. We would put the house back together. Mom and Dad never knew we were up there destroying it. A devil? Oh, he was a devil. we would sit and have dinner. And Stephen knew of a little quirk in his sister Stephanie. She had an incredible aversion to mushrooms. If you said mushrooms to Stephanie, she would have a gag reflex. One night we're sitting there at the dinner table. He finishes his meal. He looks at me. On goes that nice little devilish grin. He leans over to his sister. Stephanie, there was mushrooms in that. What? And all you would hear Mom and Dad say, Stephen, go to your room. That's not nice. Go to your room. And off he would go, laughing his head off. He had his toys. He had everything he needed. Intensity. I had the privilege the first time of going back to Acadia in the homecoming game to watch my grandson, who I had seen play football along the Lower Mainland so many times. But when you're in the university level, you're playing at an absolutely different pace. You're playing at an absolutely different skill level. And to sit in those stands and watch this young man with the intensity of playing a game that I loved, that he absolutely loved. You could tell by the way he played it. He would sit on the sidelines, and it was like watching a tense machine ready to spring once he was called into action. He told me one time he thought football was a chess game on the move. And he was one of the key components of that game. And watching him play that particular day, I feared for the other players that were on the opposing line because they had to stop Stephen Faoro. And I tell you, to stop him, you had to work extremely hard. The second year we took back his grandma Diane. And you had to see Diane watching this game, a game that she really didn't know an awful lot about, but again was amazed at his intensity, amazed at how the game transpired. And here we are at the end of the game, walking onto the field, which is now quite muddy, and the absolute look of horror on her face as her grandson, covered head to toe in mud, coming to hug her. And hug her he did. The first night, a little story I got to tell you, first night that time I went back to watch him play, Stephen and I went out after the game. And I had the privilege of going to the alumni's house and listening to people talk about my grandson. And they loved his football. But the thing that made me so proud that evening, thrilled, was what they talked about his humanity and how he cared for the children, for the people, for the team in this town. And I can remember him coming to our house, and I have grandsons here in the audience that got to know him, got to love him, got to be bear hugged by him. He was an absolute comedian first order. You could have something going on and he would take off. He would have you laughing in your seats. He was everything, and you've heard it here many times tonight. Where can you hear or see a group of individuals say, he was everything I ever wanted? So tonight, and in this room, this is magical. This is Stephen Faoro forever. This is his magic. He's given you a gift. And tonight, when you leave here, you can open that gift. And what you will find is something you cannot see, you cannot touch. but it is the spirituality of a human being that gave of himself. Take it with you, cherish it, use it, play it forward. He would have loved it. Thank you very much.
And we're going to have Sylvia Faoro come up, Stephen's mother.
I was going to say good afternoon, everyone, but it's almost good evening. From the bottom of my broken heart, I want to thank each and every one of you for coming and supporting all of us. Stephen Ray Faoro was born February the 4th, 1982. He was named after his nono from Rick's side, Stephen Ray Faoro, weighing in at 9 pounds, 1 ounce. Boy, did I know it. Our family doctor and family friend said that Stephen was the largest shouldered child he'd ever delivered. I knew it. Stephen was an easy baby, a good baby. Stephen just loved to eat and sleep. His Auntie Janet, who was the nurse at Vancouver General Hospital, helped me and Rick bring him into this world. When Auntie Janet would come over from Victoria, he would ask her question after question. How long was it? 16 hours? Big back pain? Oh my God, I was a big boy. Tell me again, Auntie Janet. He loved to hear the stories. Rick and I raised Stephen to respect his elders, to respect women, and to never judge by race, color, religion, or disability. I watched mums in the shopping mall who would pull their children away when somebody was different. I took Stephen by the hand and told him to go and say hello. One day, a lady in a wheelchair was missing one of her legs. Stephen walked over and patted her on the leg and said, "What happened, lady?" She said, "I was in a car accident." He bent down and kissed her leg, and she hugged him tight and thanked me. I know that you all know Stephen as the Hulk, but I remember the little boy who was afraid of the dark, who didn't like the monsters in the closet, and he wouldn't go to sleep until Rick opened the closet doors and I hung John Wayne in the closet. When I told Stephen he wasn't allowed to have his soother anymore, he said, "Why, Mom?" I said, "Because Auntie Lori told me that the little birds need it and the mummy bird's going to come and get it." And Christy threw hers away too. He threw it out the window. Rick ran down and put it in the garbage. When he was about 3, Rick was working out of town a lot. Stephen became my little man. We had dates together. We ordered way too much Chinese food and watched way too many John Wayne movies. One weekend when Rick was away, we were taking a DVD back to the store. He tripped over the garage ledge and fell flat on his face. The DVD cover rammed itself up his chin, across his cheek, and ripped part of his face off. I called Auntie Dolly next door and I said, "Please come quick, we're going to the hospital." Uncle Ron drove, and I held him in my arms and sang his baby song to him. Not one peep. Except, "Don't cry, Mummy. I'll be okay." In emergency, the doctor called for 4 nurses to hold Stephen down. They quickly realized that they didn't need anybody to hold him down. He was tough and he was just going to lay there and take it. The doctor asked Stephen, "How did you do this?" "I fell on Superwoman," he said. When I was pregnant with Stephanie, he would love to do up my shoes. "Don't worry, Mom. Sit down. I'll do it." He was 4.5. He was so proud and passionate about having a sister. People would tease him about having a brother. He would cry, "Tell him to stop, Mommy. I'm only going to have my baby Sarah." On one of our doctor's appointments, Dr. Hestron asked Stephen, "What do you think of your mom's tummy?" He said, "It looks like my mom swallowed the expo ball, but there better be my sister in there." Stephen and I just had this feeling. We knew in our hearts we were having a girl. We bought everything pink. Poor Rick. He would just shake his head. Sure enough, one morning, while Stephen and I were canoodling on the couch, watching a John Wayne movie, I went into labor. Stephen jumped off the couch and said, "Get going, Mommy. Come home with Sarah. I want her home now." He was so cute. I've been reading on Facebook all the stories. One said he worshiped his mother, his best friend was his father, he idolized and protected his sister, and Cash and his dog and Megan, Cash his dog and Megan were the love of his life. He asked me to help him buy an engagement ring for Megan. His cousin Corey and Robin are getting married on New Year's Eve. He wanted to propose to Megan on New Year's Day, the same day that my dad proposed to Diane. And making it the other part of the family, he wanted to propose in front of his nono and all of his family from his dad's side. He always included everybody. They told me, Robin and Corey, how honored they are to have Stephen think of them on their day. Stephen always sent me text messages on Valentine's Day. This year he said, "Mom, I have two loves of my life, but you will always be my first Valentine." On Mother's Day, he invited me over for dinner. He was 30 minutes late, as usual. He said, "Mom, I was picking up your four-legged grandson." We all fell in love with Cash. I gave Cash his first bath. Megan and I played for hours, and Stephen did all the cooking. Stephen passed away November 16th, and my birthday was November 17th. He was so excited to tell me on my birthday, my surprise was a grandchild. As a mother, I'm so proud of Stephen's football achievements, but I am more proud of the man he was off the field. Thanks to social media, I can read all of your stories. As soon as I finish reading Messenger, I go to WhatsApp, I go to Facebook, I go to email, and then I have to start all over again. Thank you all for loving my son, our son, and keeping him in your hearts. I know he's not gone, and I know that his life has not been unnoticed, and I know that his dad and I did a great job. Thank you.
And now we're going to have a few words from Stephen's dad, Rick Faoro. Thank you.
First of all, I would just like to start by thanking you all for being here today to celebrate Stephen's life. The kind words and overwhelming support and love that you've shown to his family, his mother Sylvia, his sister Stephanie, his partner Megan, and myself have been an enormous comfort to us all. Thank you for your patience here today. I know it's been long, and I know so many people want to say things, and thank you again for your patience. I'd also like to thank my daughter, Stephanie, for helping out with all of this, too, as well, during an incredibly difficult time, and she held it together, and it's just been amazing, as was Candace and a number of other family and friends who have helped out, and everybody's just been fantastic. Steve's love of life was evident from the beginning. As he was born, anxious to see his Nona, who was ill at the time. He was a joy from the beginning. His infectious smile and laugh would keep everyone amused. He gave his mother and I peace by almost sleeping through the entire night from day one. Stephen was anxious to experience everything as quickly as he could. This was evident by his ability to go from sitting to walking and bypass crawling altogether. As Steve grew, so did his passion to continue to live and experience life to the fullest. He was one big bruise from all his bumps and bangs. When his sister was born, they became inseparable as his passion shifted from that of mentor and protector. He could not get enough of her and was constantly carrying her around. He even went to great lengths to be with her, including pinching her during her nap time so she would wake up sooner, enabling him to play with her. His love with his sister was a bond that could not be broken and lasted throughout his life, as you'd heard today. As Steve grew, it became evident that he was special. His kids would flock to him as he was able to develop and keep friendships with ease. His friends would constantly call on him to play and hang out. His love of sports began early, and Steve participated in most, but it became evident that his passion was football. Steve loved football and what it represented to him. I remember his first championship game and the coach going around the room and talking to the players. When he asked Steve how he was doing and if he was ready to play, he replied, "Coach, I was born ready." That said it all. As Steve progressed through high school, he continued to forge relationships with all those who knew him. His friends were special to him, and he would do anything for them. I remember Steve telling his mother and I about an incident, and you heard a little bit about it early from Vince, that happened at school that day when our neighbor's daughter was being threatened by a few youths on the school bus. The difference in the story was Steve intervened at great risk to himself as they had weapons with them. The boys backed down and got off the bus, as you had heard. That evening, the girl's mother phoned and thanked Steve for his actions and his display of courage. Steve brushed it off and said he would do it again in a heartbeat. This was Steve. Steve's leadership grew as years went on. He was selected as co-captain of his high school football team and helped guide them to an unprecedented appearance in the finals of the BC High School Football Championships in just the third year of the school's existence. Steve went on, as you heard again, to play for Acadia University. He was instantly torn between his passion for football and his love for his family, as Acadia was located in Atlantic Canada, and he would have been able to see his family. We all assured him this was okay, and we supported him 100%. Steve forged many new friends and quickly became an integral part of the Acadia family. Steve brought his larger-than-life personality and love of country music to Atlantic Canada with a bang. I still recall the first homecoming game his mother and I attended. We were in a store buying some souvenirs for the game, and the sales lady asked us if we had a player on the team. We replied, yes, number 40. And before we were able to tell the lady his name, there was a squeal from the back of the store, and several girls came up to the counter yelling, "You're Cowboy Steve's parents?" Yes, Steve had arrived, complete with his Stetson and country music collection. Steve was very appreciative of his chance to play college football and has always wanted to give something back. He was able to do this by volunteering, as you've heard again, to participate in the university's Smile and Kinderstills programs to help out special needs children. He would wake up at 6 o'clock to go to therapy in the pool with the kids. As many of you know, Steve, this was a great sacrifice for him because he loved his sleep. He was immediate favorite with the kids, and his first achievement with the program was to get a young boy who was terrified to go to the water to go in with him. This was Steve. Steve cherished his college days and had the time of his life. He was able to achieve a number of football accolades throughout his tenure. You've heard them all, and they are long, so I won't repeat them. One thing just to add to that, we were recently informed, actually last evening, that Steve will be the first Canadian player ever to be inducted in the Pacific Northwest Football Hall of Fame. Although football was one of his passions, it did not define who he was as a person. He was full of energy, intense, outgoing, dedicated, fiercely loyal, and hardworking. He was all about family and loved to get together to enjoy each other's company. He loved to hear stories from his nono. He had quickly come to love his new extended family, including Helen, Chris, and Nicole. He would entertain us endlessly with his jokes, impressions, and stories. All his grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, and nephews were special to him, as you've heard. Stephen had time for everybody, young and old. When he spoke with you, he made a real connection and always genuinely was interested in what you were saying or doing. This extended to all his friends and family, or all his friends as well. When Steve would enter a room, he would immediately approach you and give you a big hug. His credo was, friends and family do not shake, they hug. Steve was more than a son to me. he was also my best friend. We had developed a father-son bond that few experienced and existed no matter how close or far away he was. Recently, we had started a landscape business together that we both enjoyed immensely. One thing I will always cherish is that we were able to thank each other each time we worked together and express our love for one another at the end of the day. Even at work, Steve was able to keep us amused with his actions and stories, and his Uncle Daryl and I would tease him as his Uncle Ange and Steve would be working, exchanging recipes to try on his next cooking venture, which he also loved to do. Steve befriended each and every client and would often take the time to check on how they were doing. He was especially enamored, as we both were, with one of our clients' two sons who would follow him relentlessly around the yard and mow their lawn with their toy lawnmowers. One of Stephen's best friends was his dog Cash. He had waited forever to get his chocolate lab, and his dream finally came true. Steve cherished Cash and had raised him to be a wonderful dog. Cash had become one of the crew, and Steve loved the attention and treats he would receive from all of our clients. Steve's final passion and love in life was for his Megan. He had finally met the woman of his dreams and was planning on proposing to her, as you've heard, to her in the coming new year. He would constantly remind us of how beautiful and wonderful a person she was. All our family loves her, and we knew she was perfect for him. Steve would tell me how much his sister and Megan had in common, including the fact they were both terrified of spiders. This amused him to no end, and I'm sure he was planning to tease and torture them equally forever. So, Steve, do not worry about your Megan, as we will all continue in love and care for your sweetheart. At this time, I would like to acknowledge two young men for their extraordinary compassion and courage. Shine and Ebby were at the scene of Stephen's accident, and at a great personal risk to themselves, traversed up and down the embankment to try and comfort Stephen, and later assisted the ambulance attendants with carrying their equipment as well. When it was confirmed that Steve had indeed passed, these two men said a Farsi prayer in his honor. They both experienced a rush of energy that passed through them, that felt like a hug. This brought tremendous comfort to his family, as everyone knew this was Steve greeting his two new friends. It's Ebby and are they here? Ebby and Shine? Please stand up. I'd just like to acknowledge them. That was... Thank you again for your humanity and kindness. It will never be forgotten. In closing, I would just like to say Steve lived life large and was a leader among men. His love, kindness, and generosity for all those that knew him will not be forgotten. He was a gift I received 32 years ago that I will cherish in my heart forever. Thank you.